The last thing Alessia Hart expected when she landed at the Suncrest Cove Resort was to be dripping wet in ocean water and completely humiliated in front of a bartender holding a soaked tray of mojitos. "Are you okay?" His voice was deep calm, but his shirt clung to his chest from the splash, and the glass shards at his feet sparkled in the sun. Alessia pushed her designer sunglasses up, blinking at the man who had tried to sidestep her but ended up knee-deep in the same crashing wave. "I'm fine. Your tray, not so much." The bartender crouched, brushing broken glass into a dustpan. His arms were tan, strong, and his jaw was tight, like he was holding back a sarcastic comment. "Guess the ocean didn't read the do not disturb sign," he muttered. She almost laughed, almost. "I'll replace the drinks," she said, pulling a black MX from her clutch like a reflex. He glanced at it, then back at her. "Don't worry about it," he said, rising to his full height. "Happens whenever the tide gets greedy. Welcome to Suncrest." Before she could respond, he turned and headed toward the bar, his wet shirt clinging to his back. Alessia had been at the resort for less than 15 minutes. She came for peace, silence, a break from boardrooms and backstabbers. As the CEO of Hart and Hale Interiors, she was used to being in control. But after a brutal acquisition fight and a scandal that almost cost her the company, she needed to disappear for a week. No press, no phones, just salt air. But the moment that bartender walked away, something in her chest shifted, and it had nothing to do with the ocean. Later that evening, she sat at the poolside bar, her laptop closed for once, her hair loose from its usual tight twist. The bartender from earlier was behind the counter, drying glasses with a faded towel. "Still working, CEO?" he asked without looking up. Her brows lifted. "How did you?" "Your assistant called the front desk. Demanded a room upgrade for MS. Alessia Hart of Hart and Hale, kind of hard to miss." Alessia frowned. "You work the front desk too?" "No, but small resort. Word gets around." He finally looked up, eyes the color of stormy skies and just as unreadable. "Name's Griffin Beck." She held out her hand. "Alessia." "I know." She laughed, sipping the drink he slid her way. "You always this charming." "Only when I'm soaked by a stranger and tipped in apologies." There it was again, that tug in her chest. She didn't like it. "Let me make it up to you," she said, setting her glass down. "Dinner on me." He leaned on the bar, amused. "You want to buy the bartender dinner?" "Unless you're scared I'll talk about wallpaper the whole time." He shook his head. "Can't tonight, I've got someone waiting." She blinked. "Oh." Then a small voice behind her said, "Dad," colored the whole sun yellow. Alessia turned. A little girl with curly brown hair and big hazel eyes ran up to Griffin, holding a crayon drawing. "Briar," he said, lifting her onto the counter. "This is Alessia. She's the one the ocean tried to eat." Briar giggled. "Hi, ocean lady." Alessia smiled, caught completely off guard. "Hi, sunshine." Griffin looked at her carefully. "Her babysitter's off tonight, otherwise I'd say yes to that dinner." Something about the way he said it made her breath catch. "I'll be here all week," she said, standing and finishing her drink. "Maybe another night." He nodded, eyes still on her. "Maybe." The next few days went faster than she expected. Alessia tried to keep her distance. She wasn't here to flirt with bartenders, especially not ones with daughters and responsibilities. But Griffin kept showing up. Bringing her drinks without asking, remembering she liked lime instead of lemon, asking how her book was going even when she wasn't holding one. And Briar was always nearby, coloring or dancing to music from the speakers. Alessia found herself waving at her from her lounge chair, smiling at her little stories. She wasn't used to kids, but Briar had a way of pulling people in. One afternoon, Alessia sat at the edge of the pool, legs in the water. Griffin passed by, Briar on his shoulders, giggling. "You look relaxed," he said, slowing down. "Do I?" she asked. "That's a first." He stopped beside her. "You don't know how to stop moving, do you?" She raised an eyebrow. "Says the guy working every shift." He shrugged. "Single dad, bills don't pay themselves." She looked at him then, really looked. His shirt was wrinkled, his shoes worn. But he had a presence calm, steady, magnetic, like he'd been through hell and built a life anyway. "How long have you been here?" she asked. 3 years, after Briar's mom left. I needed something quiet." Her heart twisted. She just left. He nodded, didn't want the responsibility, said she wasn't made for it. "And you were." "No choice, Briar's everything." Alessia looked at the little girl, now playing with a plastic flamingo. "She's lucky." He looked at her. "So am I." There was silence. Then he said, "You ever think about slowing down?" She scoffed. "I'm a CEO. I don't slow down, I build empires." He smiled, but his eyes were serious. "And who's building yours when you burn out?" She didn't have an answer. That night, she couldn't sleep. The stars outside her villa were too bright, the waves too loud, and her chest was too full of thoughts she didn't want to name. She walked to the bar barefoot, her robe tied tight. Griffin was there, wiping down the counters, a hoodie pulled over his head. "You're up late," he said. "So are you." He didn't answer. She sat down. "I think I forgot how to breathe back home." He looked at her. "Then stay here longer." "And do what? Serve drinks?" "Maybe, or maybe just be." She exhaled. "I don't know how to be." He leaned closer. "I think you do, you just forgot." She looked at him, really looked. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like Alessia Hart, CEO of a global empire. She just felt like a woman, sitting in front of a man who saw straight through her armor. "You scare me," she whispered. Griffin didn't flinch. "Good, that means I'm real." And before she could say anything else, he stood and walked away, leaving her alone with her thoughts and a feeling she couldn't shake. The next morning, Alessia stood barefoot on the balcony of her villa, watching the tide roll in and out like it was trying to tell her something she didn't want to hear. Her hair was still damp from the shower, and steam curled from the coffee in her hands. She hadn't slept much. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the weight of Griffin's words. She didn't know how to be. At breakfast, the hostess handed her a note instead of a menu. The handwriting was strong, almost rushed. "Briar wants to show you something. Meet us near the hammocks by the West Cove at 10, if you're not busy saving the world." No name, but there didn't need to be. Alessia arrived early. The West Cove was quieter, more private, a sliver of sand tucked between two cliffs. She spotted them before they noticed her. Briar was crouched in the sand, building something with sticks and shells, while Griffin leaned against a palm tree, arms crossed, watching her with a half smile. "Is this the famous ocean lady?" Briar called out when she noticed Alessia. "I heard she's a bit of a hurricane," Griffin added. Alessia stepped onto the sand, only when provoked. Briar ran over and tugged her hand. "Come see what I made." She followed the little girl to a lopsided structure outlined in driftwood, with shells arranged in patterns around the edges. "It's a sandcastle for seabirds," Briar explained, "but it's also a hotel, like the one you're staying in but fancier." Alessia crouched beside her. "Definitely fancier. This one has a built-in seashell spa." Griffin gave her a sideways glance. "Didn't take you for the imaginative type." She tilted her head. "That's because I usually don't have time to imagine anything." Briar plopped into the sand and began rearranging stones like she was drawing a floor plan. Daddy says grown-ups forget how to pretend. Alessia didn't know how to respond to that, so she didn't. Instead, she helped build the second tower, and an hour passed without her checking the time once. When Briar wandered off to collect more shells, Griffin sat beside Alessia, brushing sand from his hands. "She likes you," he said quietly. "I'm not used to kids. She doesn't usually warm up to people." Alessia looked at him, his eyes shaded by the curve of the palm tree above. "Why me?" He didn't look away, maybe because you're not pretending with her. She let out a breath. "Most people think I'm cold." "Are you?" "I don't know," she said. "I just know how to protect what I've built." Griffin's voice dropped. "What happens when what you've built keeps you from feeling anything at all?" Alessia didn't answer. That night, the resort hosted a bonfire on the beach. Alessia hadn't planned to go, but she found herself drawn by the sound of laughter and music. She stood at the edge of the gathering, hands tucked into her linen pants, unsure why she came. Griffin spotted her before she could turn away. He was tending to the fire, sleeves rolled up, heat flickering across his face. Briar was curled up nearby with a blanket and a plate of roasted marshmallows. "I was wondering if you'd show," he said, handing her a drink. "I didn't plan to." "Neither did I," he said, "but life doesn't ask for permission." They sat in the sand, a few feet from the others. The fire crackled between them. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked suddenly. "Miss what?" "Whatever life you had before this." Griffin didn't speak for a moment. "I miss the parts I didn't appreciate, like sleeping in, taking a shower without worrying about someone climbing onto the kitchen counter while I'm gone." Alessia smiled. "Sounds exhausting." "It is beautifully exhausting." She turned toward the fire. "I don't know how to be around people who don't want something from me." "I don't want anything," he said, his voice steady. "That's exactly what's disarming." Briar stirred, murmured something in her sleep, then settled again. Griffin adjusted the blanket around her. When he looked back at Alessia, his expression had changed softer, but more certain. "You ever think maybe you want something, but you've just convinced yourself it's safer not to?" Alessia swallowed hard. "I think about that more than I should." He stood. "Come on, I want to show you something." She hesitated. "Trust me," he said, "just this once." He led her along a narrow path lit by torches, winding past the guest villas until they reached a private dock that stretched into the ocean. A small boat was tethered to the end, rocking gently. "You're not getting me on that," she said. "We're not going far. There's a sandbar just beyond the reef. Only appears during low tide. 10 minutes tops." She looked back toward the resort, then at the boat. "This is wildly irresponsible." He grinned. "Exactly why you need it." They climbed in, and he steered them through the moonlit water, the hum of the motor low and steady. The night air smelled like salt and jasmine. Alessia leaned back, letting the breeze touch her face. When they reached the sandbar, Griffin cut the engine. The boat drifted gently until the bottom scraped the shallow ridge. He jumped out, boots sinking into wet sand, and offered her his hand. She hesitated, then took it. The sandbar stretched like a ribbon in the moonlight, water lapping gently on either side. Above them, stars scattered across the sky like shattered glass. He led her to the center and sat down, legs stretched in front of him. She followed, her linen pants dampening where they touched the ground. "I come here when I need to breathe," he said. "No noise, no distractions, just sky and water." She looked up. "It's quiet." He glanced at her. "You don't like quiet, do you?" "I'm learning." He paused. "Why did you come here, really?" She looked at the horizon. Because I needed to stop pretending I was okay. Griffin didn't move, and now? I don't know, she whispered, but for the first time in a long time, I want to find out. He reached for her hand again. This time, she didn't hesitate. They sat in silence, the world shrinking to moonlight and breath, until the tide began to rise. I should get back, she said reluctantly. He nodded, but didn't let go of her hand. Back at the dock, he held the boat steady as she stepped out. Thanks, she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. For what? For showing me something real. He watched her walk away, the sound of her footsteps fading into the night. And for the first time in 3 years, Griffin Beck didn't feel entirely alone. Alessia stood at the edge of the open-air market just outside the resort grounds, clutching the woven tote she'd borrowed from the front desk. The sun was high, casting sharp shadows across rows of handmade jewelry, fresh fruit, and painted ceramics. She wasn't sure what she was doing here. She hadn't planned to leave the resort, but something about last night about Griffin, about how he looked at her like she wasn't a fortress, had left her restless. She paused by a vendor selling carved wooden animals. A small dolphin, smooth and polished, caught her eye. Briar would like it. She picked it up, running her thumb across the grain, then turned to the vendor and paid without a word. Didn't think I'd see you here. Griffin's voice came from behind her, lower than usual. She turned. He wore a faded t-shirt and cargo shorts, his hair damp like he'd just come from the beach. His daughter wasn't with him. I could say the same, she said, slipping the dolphin into her bag. I take Briar here most Wednesdays, he said. She's with her sitter today, first time in weeks. Alessia raised an eyebrow. And this is how you spend your freedom. He shrugged. Promised the owner of the spice stall I'd help him unload his shipment. He's 72 and refuses to stop lifting sacks of cumin that weigh more than he does. She laughed, then caught herself. You do a lot of favors for people. It's a small island. You either help or you disappear. He nodded toward a shaded area with low tables and mismatched cushions. You eaten. She hesitated. I thought you didn't do dinner. This isn't dinner, it's a snack. Then quieter, unless you're scared of that too. She followed him to the table, removing her sandals before sitting. The vendor brought over 2 plates without being asked: grilled pineapple, marinated shrimp, and flatbread with something spicy. You know everyone here, she said, picking up a piece of fruit. I try to, he replied. Makes it harder to disappear. She studied him as he ate. There were new lines around his eyes and a faint scar near his temple she hadn't noticed before. You used to be somewhere else, didn't you? Griffin looked at her. New York. Her stomach tightened. Where in New York? Harlem, born and raised, worked in construction, then later project management. Alessia blinked. You ran crews. Until Briar's mom left, then everything shifted. She looked down at her plate. I was in Manhattan, Midtown. I know, he said. Your company designed that luxury complex on West 59th. Worked on the scaffolding. Her head snapped up. You worked on the Wren. For 7 months. I was there the day the glass panels went up on the penthouse. She stared at him. That was my first signature project. I fought like hell to get that contract. He leaned back on one elbow. You were a name on blueprints. Now you're a person sitting across from me, eating grilled pineapple. Their eyes held for a long moment. I didn't expect to meet someone like you here, she said finally. Someone like me how? Someone who makes me question everything I thought was carved in stone. Griffin didn't smile. Then maybe some of those stones weren't worth keeping. After they ate, they wandered through the market again. She watched him greet vendors by name, help a woman lift her crate of herbs, cut a deal for a child trying to buy a bracelet with only a few coins. He didn't do it for show. He simply moved through the world like someone who understood what it meant to carry weight and to lighten it for others. As they turned a corner, a man approached, waving. "Beck, we're still on for Sunday." Griffin nodded, wouldn't miss it. When the man walked off, Alessia asked, "What's Sunday?" He hesitated. "Community crew, we fix up homes for families who can't afford repairs. Roof patches, plumbing, whatever's needed." She tilted her head. "You still do construction?" "When I can, it keeps me grounded." "Let me help," she said. He stared at her. "You want to help patch a roof?" "I can hold a ladder." He laughed once, surprised. "You don't have to prove anything." "It's not about that," she said. "I need to know who am outside boardrooms and contracts." "You sure?" "No," she said, "but I want to try." As they walked back toward the resort, the light shifted. Clouds rolled in over the water, casting the island in soft gray. "I should get back to Briar," he said. "She'll want to tell me every detail of her afternoon." "Will she tell you about the dolphin I got her?" He looked at her, startled. "I saw it and thought of her, that's all." Griffin's expression changed, not softened, but something warmer. "You're not what I expected," he said quietly. "Neither are you." He walked her to the edge of the resort, then paused. "There's a staff dinner tomorrow night," he said. "Very unofficial, just food, music, no tourists, you'd be the only outsider." "Would I be welcomed?" "Depends on how well you dance." She grinned. "I'd say adequate, with flashes of brilliance." "Then we'll see about that." He turned to go. "Griffin." He stopped. "Why did you really ask me to meet you at the market?" He looked at her for a long beat before answering. "Because I needed to know if what I felt in the middle of the ocean was real." And he didn't look away. It was. Then he walked off, leaving her standing in the scent of spices and sea air, her heart thudding like it had been struck by something she hadn't seen coming. The music drifted down the hill in lazy waves, a mix of steel drums and laughter echoing from the resort staff lodge tucked behind a grove of palms. Alessia hesitated at the edge of the lantern-lit clearing, her heels sinking into the soft earth. She hadn't worn anything extravagant, just a soft, sleeveless blouse and linen trousers, but she still felt like she was stepping across a line she'd never imagined crossing. Not as a CEO, not as someone who once believed every moment had to. Griffin spotted her before she moved. He was helping carry a folding table onto the lawn, sleeves pushed up, sweat glinting at his temple. He handed off the table and walked toward her, hands in his pockets. "You came," he said. "I wasn't sure I would." "Neither was I," he said, "but I'm glad you did." Someone called his name, and he held up a hand in acknowledgement. "We're almost done setting up. You hungry?" "Not yet," she said. "I wanted to see this first." He glanced around. "It's not exactly 5-star. "It's real," she said. "That's why I'm here." He nodded toward a cluster of chairs near the back. "Come on. I'll introduce you to the people who keep this place afloat." For the next hour, Alessia met housekeepers with tired smiles, maintenance workers with quick jokes, and kitchen staff who told her which dishes to avoid if she didn't like spice. No one asked her to explain herself. No one treated her like the woman on magazine covers. They welcomed her like she belonged. Later, as the sun sank behind the hills and the sky turned violet, someone started dancing. Not formal or choreographed, just joyful, spontaneous movement. Griffin leaned against a post, watching the swirl of color and light. "Do you dance?" Alessia asked. "I do a lot of things I don't admit to," he said. She stepped closer. "Is that your way of saying no?" "It's my way of saying, I'll make a fool of myself if you do." She reached out a hand. "Then let's be fools together." They danced barefoot under the strings of lights, not perfectly, not gracefully, but with the kind of freedom Alessia didn't know she'd been craving. Griffin spun her once, then caught her around the waist, holding her just a second longer than necessary. She didn't move away. Afterward, they walked down to the beach, the music fading behind them. The sand was cool now, the waves calmer than they'd been all week. "You've changed," Griffin said. Alessia looked at the horizon. "Have I?" "You're not checking your watch, you're not scanning the room, you're just here." She picked up a shell and turned it in her hand. "I think, forgot how to exist without a goal." "That's not living, Alessia, that's surviving." She looked at him then. "And what do you call this?" He stepped closer. "A start." She let the shell fall. "I'm leaving in 2 days. Have meetings in Tokyo, a design expo in Milan. My schedule's booked solid for the next 3 months." "I figured," he said. She turned to him. "So what are we doing?" Griffin's jaw tightened. "I don't know, but I know what I want." He took her hand, firm and certain. "I want you to remember this place, not the resort. This, us. I want you to remember that you felt something real here when everything else in your life was noise. And I want you to know that if you ever wanted more." She cut him off. "You'd be waiting." He didn't blink. "I'd be here." A breeze lifted her hair, and she stepped into him, laying her head against his chest. She listened to the steady beat of his heart, the one thing that hadn't rushed her or demanded anything. "I don't want to go back to who I was," she whispered. "Then don't." "I don't know how to keep both parts of me." "You don't have to choose," he said. "You just have to stop hiding from the part that feels more like you." She pulled back to look at him, eyes searching. "You scare me." He smiled, not with triumph but with understanding. "That means we're getting somewhere." When she returned to her villa, she didn't open her laptop. She didn't draft emails or check her schedule. She sat on the bed, barefoot, staring at the dolphin figurine she'd set on the nightstand. It wasn't just a gift. It was proof that she'd paused long enough to see someone else's joy. The following afternoon, she found Briar near the fountain in the main courtyard. The little girl was drawing flowers in the dust with a stick. "I have something for you," Alessia said, kneeling beside her. Briar looked up, blinking. "Is it chocolate?" "Better." She handed her a small, silver pendant on a cord. It was shaped like a bird mid-flight. "Birds that live near the sea can fly for thousands of miles," Alessia said, "even when they don't know where they'll land." Briar's eyes widened. "Like me and Daddy." "Just like you and Daddy." The girl hugged her with surprising strength for someone so small. Griffin appeared behind them a moment later, watching. "She doesn't let many people in." Alessia stood. "Neither do I." She reached into her bag and handed him a sealed envelope. "What's this?" "My company's opening a satellite design studio in San Diego. It's quiet, near the water. I need someone to oversee the project management and build-out phase. It's not a gift. It's a job, one you're more than qualified for." He stared at the envelope. "You're offering me a way out." "I'm offering you a way forward," she said, "if you want it." He looked at her then, no trace of doubt in his eyes. "You said you were leaving tomorrow." "I moved my flight," she said. "I'm staying through the weekend." He stepped closer. "Why?" She breathed in. "Because I don't want to walk away from the first thing in my life that wasn't part of a plan." He kissed her then, slow and certain, the kind of kiss that didn't ask for anything except honesty. It wasn't rushed or desperate, it was a beginning. When they pulled apart, Briar clapped from the fountain. "You kissed her, Daddy." Griffin laughed, resting his forehead against Alessia's. "Guess there's no going back now." She smiled, her heart full for the first time in years. "Good, I don't want to." 3 weeks later, Alessia stood barefoot on the deck of a modest beach house in San Diego, watching Briar chase seagulls across the sand. Griffin was inside, unpacking boxes while music played softly from a speaker. She turned as he stepped out, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "Still think I'm reckless?" she asked. He handed her a mug. "No, I think you're brave." She leaned into him as they watched the waves roll in, the world finally quiet enough for her to hear what her heart had been trying to say all along. Here with him, she wasn't the CEO or the hurricane or the woman running from burnout. She was just Alessia, and for the first time, that was more than enough. The morning sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains, casting golden streaks across the kitchen floor as Griffin cracked eggs into a pan. The scent of fresh coffee filled the small beach house, and the soft patter of Briar's feet echoed down the hallway as she padded in, still wearing her favorite mismatched socks. "She's still asleep?" she asked, climbing onto a stool. Griffin nodded. Late night of interior design strategy. He flipped a pancake with a practiced motion. She said she had a dream about floating shelves. Briar giggled. She said could help pick the pillows for the new office. "You've got an eye for color. I wouldn't be surprised if she gives you a job offer." "I'm already her assistant," Briar said proudly, hugging the dolphin pendant around her neck. The beach house had transformed in small but meaningful ways since they moved in. Alessia's sketchbooks lay open on the dining table, covered in pencil lines and swatches. Griffin's toolbox sat by the back door, always ready. Their lives had begun to fold into one another not all at once, but inch by inch, like waves reshaping the shoreline. When Alessia finally emerged, her eyes still heavy with sleep and her curls pulled into a loose braid, Griffin handed her a mug without a word. She leaned against the counter, sipping slowly, watching him as if she still couldn't quite believe he was real. "I had a call from San Diego office leasing," she said. "They want to feature our build-out in their next campaign." "That's good, right?" She nodded. "It's more than good. It's exposure in a way we never had before. I want to do something different with this space. Less polish, more texture, real materials, things that feel lived in." "You're not chasing perfection anymore," he said. "No," she replied. "I'm chasing meaning." Briar reached for a pancake, and Alessia helped her cut it, their hands moving in sync without thought. Griffin watched them, his chest tightening in that familiar, quiet way it had been ever since he realized this life, this version of everything wasn't just temporary. Later that afternoon, while Briar was at art camp and Griffin was repairing a neighbor's porch railing, Alessia walked along the beach, her phone in hand. She had 3 missed calls from a design firm in Paris, one from her assistant, and a calendar alert blinking about a gala on the East Coast she'd forgotten to cancel. She didn't return any of them. Instead, she sat on the weathered bench beneath the bluff and started drafting a letter. By the time Griffin returned home, a thin layer of sawdust clinging to his sleeves, she was in the kitchen again, barefoot, her laptop closed and a single envelope resting on top. "I sent a letter to my board," she said without preamble. "I'm restructuring the company." He raised an eyebrow, setting his tool belt by the door. "How much restructuring are we talking?" "I'm stepping down as CEO." Griffin froze. "I'll stay on as creative director, but the day-to-day is going to someone else. Someone I trust." He crossed the room slowly. "You built that company." "I did," she said, "and it almost built a wall around me. I don't want to live behind that anymore. I want to design, not drown in meetings and negotiations. I want to walk Briar to school. I want to spend mornings sketching and afternoons watching the tide come in." He took her face in his hands. "This isn't just about slowing down, is it?" "No," she whispered. "It's about finally choosing the life I never thought I was allowed to want." Griffin kissed her then, not in the cautious way they had before, but with the certainty of someone who had waded through storms and doubts and now stood in the calm afterward. She melted into him, arms around his waist, heart open in a way it had never been. That night, they took Briar to the pier. There was a pop-up fair with string lights, cotton candy, and a carousel that creaked with every turn. Briar rode the painted white horse 3 times in a row, laughing until she hiccuped. When Alessia stepped off the platform, Griffin pulled her aside, his expression unreadable. "I've been carrying something around," he said. "Something I didn't know how to give you." She blinked as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a black velvet box. Her breath caught. "I don't have a yacht, I don't have a penthouse, but I have this life, this beach, this little house, and I want to share it with you, completely, no conditions." He opened the box, revealing a ring crafted from brushed platinum, set with a single, deep green sapphire. "No diamonds," he said. "You already shine enough." Tears welled in her eyes, her voice caught in her throat. "Yes," she said before he could ask. "Yes, Griffin, 1,000 times yes." Briar spotted them hugging and ran over, skidding to a stop in the sand. "Did something happen?" Griffin crouched to her level. "We're going to be a family." Briar blinked, like forever family. Alessia smiled, kneeling beside them, forever and always. She wrapped her arms around both of them, and for the first time, Alessia Hart felt like she had everything not because she owned it, but because she'd chosen it. 1 year later, the beach house had grown. A new wing had been added, designed by Alessia herself, with wide windows that let in the morning light and a studio that overlooked the sea. Griffin ran a small construction company now, built on word of mouth and gratitude. He never advertised, but his schedule was always full. Briar had her own room, painted in seafoam blue with shelves for her growing collection of ocean treasures. Every evening, she ran along the shore, her laughter a soundtrack to the life they'd built. That summer, Alessia opened a boutique studio downtown, just 3 employees, 1 dog, and a waiting list that stretched into the next season. She worked when she wanted, created what she loved, and came home every day to a house that no longer felt like a pause in her life, but the very center of it. On a late August evening, Griffin grilled fish on the deck while Alessia sketched with her feet in his lap. Briar braided seaweed into her hair nearby, humming to herself. "Do you miss New York?" Griffin asked, handing her a glass of white wine. She shook her head. "New York built me, but this," she gestured around them, "this made me whole." He kissed her shoulder. "Took you long enough to find us." She leaned into him, her voice soft. "You were worth the wait." They stayed like that until the stars appeared overhead, a family built not by fate but by choice, every piece earned, every moment cherished. And the tide, forever faithful, brought the waves in close, then pulled them gently back just far enough to remind them that the life they'd found wasn't a dream. It was home,